The observation chamber fell silent as the first humans stepped onto the gravity platform. Queen Shlara of the Vextari Empire watched through reinforced viewing glass, her forearms folded in ceremonial posture. Behind her stood Commander Velkov, the Empire's most decorated warrior, his scales gleaming under the station's harsh lights. "Increase to standard Vextari gravity," Velkoth ordered. The human, a female wearing simple gray clothing marked with the word volunteer, stumbled as the platform hummed to life. 1.4 times Earth's gravity. The human caught herself knees bending, then straightened. She smiled. Velkoth's throat sac inflated with irritation. Again. 2.0. The human's smile vanished. Her legs trembled. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she remained standing. "Impossible," whispered Shlara's youngest daughter, Princess Kaelin, barely 6 cycles old. "Our soldiers trained for years to withstand such pressure." Something felt wrong. The human's breathing had changed, not the desperate gasping of someone failing, but the controlled rhythm of someone conserving strength. Enduring. "Commander," Shlara said quietly, "what is Earth's gravity measurement?" Velkov checked his data tablet without looking away from the human. 0.97 standard units, Your Majesty. Essentially 1.0. They evolved in conditions barely sufficient to walk. Medical drones rushed forward, but she was already pushing herself up, waving them away. Through the chamber speakers, her voice came rough but steady. Again. Velkoth's scales darkened to purple. Confusion mixed with respect. "The human requests continuation." Shalara leaned forward. Her intelligence ministers had warned her that Earth's dominant species might pose a threat despite their weak homeworld. The Vextari had conquered 47 species across 12 systems. Each had proven their worth through physical trials before being granted client status within the Empire. Those who failed became tributary worlds, their resources harvested, their people conscripted for labor unsuited to Vextari physiology. Earth's oceans contained minerals essential for faster-than-light drives. Their forests grew organic compounds that accelerated healing. The planet itself sat at a strategic crossroads between 3 major trade routes. The Vextari needed Earth, but protocols demanded testing. "Your Majesty," Velkoth began, "perhaps we should proceed to the military demonstration." "No," Shlara's word carried absolute authority. "I would see this through." 2.0 gravity, twice what her body was designed for, and she stood ready. Velkoth had watched Vextari soldiers, bred for war across generations, collapse under such pressure during their first exposure. This human had endured it within minutes of arrival. 3.0, the Queen commanded. Velkov's claws clicked against his tablet. "Your Majesty, that exceeds safety parameters for unaugmented." "Do it." The human went down instantly, crashing to her knees with a sound that made Kaelin gasp. The female's arms braced against the platform, her entire body shaking. Blood dripped from her nose, spattering the white surface beneath her. "Stop this," Kaelin whispered. "Mother, please." But Shalara watched the human's face. Pain, yes, but not surrender. The female's jaw was set, her eyes focused on something beyond the chamber, beyond the pain. Her lips moved, forming words too quiet for the speakers to catch. 30 seconds passed. The human's arms straightened, slowly, impossibly lifting her torso off the platform. Her legs drew beneath her. She was trying to stand. "Remarkable," breathed Velkoth. At 3:08, her bones should be fracturing under her own body weight. Shlara could see it in the way the human's left wrist bent at an unnatural angle, the way her right leg trembled with more than exhaustion. But still she rose, centimeter by centimeter, until she stood swaying in gravity 3 times what her evolution had prepared her for. The human's eyes found the viewing glass, found Shlara, and smiled again. A terrible, defiant expression painted in blood and sweat. Then her femur snapped. The crack echoed through both chambers. The human dropped, screaming, and this time the medical drones didn't wait for permission. They swarmed over her, gravity cutting to 0 as they worked. Velkoth was already moving toward the exit. "I will oversee her treatment personally, Your Majesty." The human showed extraordinary courage. "When she recovers, we can schedule another—" "Bring in their soldiers," Shalara interrupted. The commander stopped. "Your Majesty? Their military representatives? I was informed Earth sent both civilian volunteers and trained warriors for these demonstrations." Shlara's eyes never left the chamber below, where medical drones were loading the broken human onto a transport. "If their civilians can endure this, I would see what their soldiers can do." The human military contingent requested permission to observe this test before participating in their own trials. They are waiting in the adjacent facility. Then they saw. Shlara turned from the window. They watched one of their own break beneath our world's gravity. And still they wait to prove themselves? Yes, Your Majesty. Something cold settled in Shlara's chest. In 40 years of conquest, she had learned to recognize danger in many forms. It wasn't always in superior weapons or advanced technology. Sometimes it was in the eyes of prey that refused to run. How many soldiers did Earth send? 20, Your Majesty. They call themselves Marines. Shalara's claws extended involuntarily. Marine. The humans had translated it as warriors of the water. Earth's oceans covered most of their planet. They had evolved as land creatures, but named their elite fighters after the sea. Bring them, she commanded. All 20. We test them together. Velkoth's scales paled. Your Majesty, the platform's capacity is sufficient. I want no individual tests. I want to see how they function as a unit under pressure. Shlara moved toward the door, Kylene following silently. And, Commander, start at 2.0 gravity. If they wish to prove themselves worthy of partnership with the Vextari Empire, let them prove it quickly. As you command. The chamber cleared. Shlara watched from the observation deck as the human soldiers entered below. They moved with practiced efficiency, each step measured, each glance purposeful. They wore no armor, only simple fatigues in mottled green and brown. Not one looked at the bloodstains still being cleaned from the platform. Their leader, a male with silver hair and scars crossing his dark skin, stopped at the platform's edge. He raised one hand. The other 19 formed up behind him in precise rows, 4 wide, 5 deep. Platform active in 30 seconds, Velkoth's voice announced. Starting gravity 2.0 standard. As one, all 20 stepped onto the platform. The hum built. Shlara leaned forward. The gravity field activated.
And the screaming began.
Not from the humans. From the platform itself, as 20 bodies hit the surface with enough force to crack the reinforced deck plating. 3 soldiers collapsed immediately, their legs buckling. The others swayed, bracing against each other, fighting to remain upright. The silver-haired leader went to one knee, then forced himself back up. His voice cut through the chamber, rough but clear. Hold formation! They held. 14 still standing, 6 on their knees, 0 lying down. At gravity twice what their bodies were built for, they maintained military discipline. 30 seconds elapsed, Velkoth reported. Shall I? Then another. A female soldier in the second row screamed as her ankle gave way, bone piercing through skin. She fell into the soldier behind her, who caught her despite his own legs shaking. Hold formation! The leader commanded again. The wounded soldier gritted her teeth and tried to stand on her shattered ankle. Failed. Tried again. Enough, Shlara said quietly. Velkoth didn't move to shut down the platform. Commander, I said. 60 seconds, Velkoth interrupted, his voice strange. Your Majesty, they have maintained formation for 60 seconds at 2.0 gravity. Below, a male soldier's radius bone snapped with a sound like breaking crystal. He didn't fall, didn't even cry out. He simply shifted his weight to his other arm and remained in formation. The silver-haired leader's nose was bleeding. So were his ears. But his eyes stayed focused forward, locked on some invisible point only he could see. 90 seconds. Their squad mates caught them, holding them up, sharing the crushing weight. Kylene's small hand gripped Shlara's arm. Mother, this is wrong. They are breaking. Why do they not surrender? Because they can't, Shlara realized with dawning horror. Not won't. Can't. These humans had been trained so thoroughly, conditioned so completely that surrender wasn't in their vocabulary. They would stand until their skeletons shattered, until their organs ruptured under their own mass, until death released them from duty. The Vextari bred soldiers across generations, selecting for strength and aggression. But they had never thought to breed soldiers who couldn't break. 120 seconds. Your Majesty, this exceeds our own military standards by... The platform's reinforced plating cracked down the center. The gravity field destabilized, surging to 2.3 before Velkoth killed it completely. In that surge, 7 more soldiers fell. Bones snapped like gunfire. Femurs, tibias, spines compressing, ribs cracking inward. The screaming filled the chamber, finally breaking through their discipline. But the silver-haired leader remained standing. Alone now, surrounded by his broken unit, he stood at attention in the failing gravity field, Blood ran from his nose, his ears, the corners of his eyes. His right leg bent at an impossible angle below the knee. But he stood. Medical drones flooded the platform. The human soldiers began refusing treatment, trying to wave the drones away, trying to return to formation even as their shattered limbs failed them. The drones had to sedate them. All except the leader. He watched his soldiers being carried away, counted each one with his eyes, and only when the last Marine was safely on a transport did he finally allow himself to collapse. Shlara stood frozen at the observation window. Behind her, Velkoth was speaking rapidly into his communicator, calling for additional medical support, structural engineers to repair the damaged platform, analysts to review the test data. She ignored him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the chamber below, on the bloodstains and the broken deck plating, and the sedated humans being rushed to medical. "Mother?" Kylan's voice was very small. "What kind of species does this to themselves?" In 40 years of conquest, she had never encountered anything like this. Species that fought with desperation. Species that resisted enslavement, of course. But species that would stand in formation while their own bodies broke around them? Species that trained their soldiers to endure the impossible rather than surrender? The communications panel chimed. Velkoth answered it, listened, then turned to Shlara with an expression she'd never seen on his face before. Not fear, exactly, but close. "Your Majesty, the human diplomatic vessel has transmitted a message." "What does it say?" "Earth wishes to know if the demonstrations were satisfactory, and if not, they have 3,000 additional Marines in orbit ready to continue the trials." Earth had sent 3,000 of these unbreakable soldiers to prove themselves worthy. And they were volunteers. The humans had made that clear. Every Marine aboard that ship had chosen to be here. Shlara's hands trembled. She folded them together, regaining composure. "What are the human casualties from today's test?" Velkoth consulted his tablet. The civilian volunteer suffered a fractured femur and wrist, severe bruising, minor internal bleeding. "Full recovery expected in 6 to 8 weeks with our medical technology. Of the 20 Marines, 4 fractured spines, 12 broken legs, 6 broken arms, 3 shattered ankles, 2 ruptured eardrums, 1 collapsed lung, and extensive soft tissue damage across all subjects. Recovery time 3 to 4 months. And how many requested to withdraw from further testing?" Velkoth looked up from his tablet. "None, Your Majesty." The human commander, the silver-haired male, regained consciousness briefly during treatment. He asked when the next trial would begin. Of course he did. Shlara turned away from the window, her mind racing. The Vextari Empire had built itself on strength, on domination, on the belief that superior force granted superior rights. They had crushed resistance across a dozen worlds and made those people grateful for the privilege of serving. But Earth wouldn't serve. Not out of gratitude, not out of fear. If the Vextari tried to conquer them, tried to take their resources by force, these humans would fight with the same impossible determination they'd just demonstrated. They would stand in formation while their bones shattered. They would smile through broken faces. They would refuse to surrender, even as their bodies failed. "And they had 3,000 more just like them in orbit." "Commander Velkoth," Shlara said quietly, "prepare a diplomatic channel to the human vessel." "Your Majesty, tell them the demonstrations are concluded. Tell them Earth has proven itself worthy of full partnership status within the Vextari Empire." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Tell them we waive all remaining physical trials and invite their diplomatic corps to begin treaty negotiations immediately." Velkoth's scales shifted to pale blue surprise. "Your Majesty, the Council will demand an explanation." "Protocol requires... Protocol," Shlara interrupted, "was written for species that could be broken. Earth cannot be broken, Commander. I will not waste Vextari lives attempting what gravity itself could not accomplish." She walked toward the exit, Kylene hurrying to keep pace. At the door, Shlara stopped and looked back at the observation window one final time. Medical teams were still cleaning the chamber below, erasing the evidence of what had happened here. But Shlara would remember. She would remember the human female who smiled through pain. She would remember the Marines who held formation as their bodies shattered. She would remember the commander who stood alone, the last one standing, counting his fallen soldiers before allowing himself to fall. Most of all, she would remember that Earth had sent volunteers. That 3,000 more waited in orbit, ready to prove themselves the same way. The Vextari Empire had conquered 47 species. Today, Shlara decided they would befriend their 48th. Because some prey, when you looked into their eyes, turned out to be predators in disguise. And the wise hunter learned to recognize the difference before the jaws closed around their throat. "Mother," Kalen whispered as they walked through the corridor, "what if we had made them enemies instead?" Shlara's claws retracted fully, a gesture of deep unease. "Then we would have learned, my daughter, that there are worse things than defeat in battle. We would have learned what it means to fight an enemy who cannot surrender, who will not break, who sees death itself as just another obstacle to overcome." They reached the diplomatic wing where Earth's ambassadors waited. Through the transparent doors, Shallara could see them. Humans in formal attire, looking fragile and small compared to Vextari bulk. Easy to underestimate, easy to dismiss. Until you put them under pressure and watched them refuse to break. Shallara straightened her ceremonial robes and prepared to offer Earth not subjugation but alliance. Not because the humans were strong, though they were. Not because they were advanced, though their technology impressed her military advisors, but because today she had witnessed something that no amount of weapons or warships could replicate, a will that exceeded the body's capacity to enforce it, a determination that transcended physical limitation, a species that had looked at gravity itself, at the fundamental force that shaped the universe, and decided it was just another challenge to overcome. The doors opened. The human ambassadors rose to greet her, their faces carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Behind them, on a wall screen, footage played from the gravity trials. The Marine commander, standing alone in 2.3 gravity, his body broken but his eyes still fixed forward, still refusing to fall. Shlera extended all four hands in the Vextari gesture of equal respect, a greeting reserved for fellow empires, not client states. "Welcome," she said, "to the beginning of a partnership between equals. The human ambassador, a female with iron-gray hair and eyes like Earth's winter skies. We hoped you would see reason, Your Majesty. Our species may be different, but we share something important." "And what is that?" The ambassador smiled, and Shallara saw an echo of that same terrible defiance she'd witnessed on the gravity platform. The understanding that some things are worth standing for, no matter what weight we must bear. In orbit above the station, 3,000 Marines waited to prove themselves. They would never need to. Earth had already demonstrated everything the Vextari needed to know. Some species, Shllara understood now, you conquered. Others you enslaved, still others you absorbed into your empire as clients and tributaries. And some, rare, dangerous, beautiful in their absolute refusal to yield, you treated as partners, as equals. As allies whose friendship was worth infinitely more than their subjugation. Because when the next threat emerged from the darkness between stars, when the next empire came seeking to test the Vextari's strength, Shllara wanted these impossible humans standing beside her people. She wanted that unbreakable will fighting with her instead of against her. She wanted humanity on her side when the universe pressed down with crushing weight, because she had seen with her own eyes that humans did not break. They stood. They endured. They smiled through blood and bone, and then they asked to go again.